Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Match Day. I'm Vince, and we have Ian. And in the middle, at least on my screen, is Sophie Dewar. Sophie, can you please say hello? Make sure we can hear you.
Hello.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So I'm going to let Ian kind of run this more because he knows Sophie a lot better than I do. But Sophie's with Challenger Sports, and I'm really interested just listening to this whole presentation on how to run a virtual soccer camp. This is completely new to me. So this is going to be fascinating. So thank you, Sophie, for taking your time.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So thank you. Great audience so far, and we'll get the recording up. Sophie works with Challenger, which is the biggest camp program in America, based here in Kansas City. Sophie's currently in Rhode Island, and Sophie and I see each other once or twice a year when we're doing a coaching convention in honor of Tony DeChico with Ray Reid out in Connecticut. Anyway, so high school camps, college camps, certainly commercial camps like Challenger. Challenger is absolutely one of the very best in terms of quality control and management. But like Vince and I are working now in an increasingly more virtual world in coach education, all of us are working in a different way of engaging our athletes. And Sophie and the good people at Challenger have been developing these virtual camp programs. So we're going to turn it over to Sophie to talk a little bit about it. Please put some questions in the chat box. We've got a little slide deck we'll show you, and we'll let Sophie explain the program. And then Vince and I have questions, some of which we've already given her off air. And certainly some of you guys can ask questions and learn a little bit more about how these camps work and potentially how your athletes could access them. So yeah, Sophie, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to speak a bit more around the topic and more about what I've learned through this process. So if you do want more specifics, obviously put those questions in the chat and we can get into those. But we'll get to it, Vince, if you want to start sharing the slide deck.
Absolutely.
There we go. Okay then. So what I'm basically going to discuss today is where we are from a training and delivery standpoint, and try and compare this to a pre-COVID existence, as well as maybe look ahead post-COVID and see how it still might have its place, its impact. So this virtual training, delivery, coaching world is pretty much all I've been living in since I think March. With anything that you're sort of thrown in at the deep end with, you learn a lot and you learn it very quickly. So I thought it could be helpful, especially again, like Vince said, if there's any high school, college, whatever coaches are out there looking at this avenues and how to best do it, is to sort of share both retrospectively and also look ahead to what my experience could help shape what is to come. So what do things look like today? I think it's a fairly common feeling right now that we don't really know where we are or where we're going with any real conviction. Today could change tomorrow based on factors that are largely beyond our control. So there's things that we can control and things that we can't control. And it's been very easy for us in this climate to worry about those things that we can't control. But there are always things under our control that we can spend more energy on and probably see more of the positives that can come from that. So, in this virtual environment, I personally can control what happens in the safety of my own home. And that's obviously where our virtual programs are delivered to. So when you're delivering something online, primarily or for the most part, people are going to be receiving them in their own homes. And there's this virtual presence which won't only be here today, but it'll outlive this time in COVID-19. So what I mean by that is we have, in a basic sense, two ends of a spectrum, right? We have this new normal whereby most things are online and we're heavily restricted with what we can and cannot do, versus how it used to be, whereby there's very limited opportunities online to those of us like me who don't fall under the tech guy or gamer, vlogger, whatever it might be. Most of us didn't engage in this way very heavily before. and probably never would have experienced it in the way we all are now without the current situation. So, you know, people tend to commit to either end of the spectrum, right? It's, all right, this is the way of the world now, or once we get through this, everything will go back to normal, and that's the way I like it. And they don't really consider a neutral ground. There's a place there where once we get past this, what in terms of the virtual world will survive? It reminds me, actually, I'll never forget what my tutor from a national diploma, it was Sue Ryan. Don't know if you know Arian, but she was my tutor and she was fantastic. And there was something she said to me then, which I use a lot in coaching, but it's also very pertinent to this field. And she said, there's rarely any nevers or always in soccer. So, you know, you can't say to someone unequivocally to clear the lines versus having to play out from the back. I say that dubiously because I'm an Arsenal fan, so maybe we should say that more. But most of the time, there's a case for either side. It's entirely situational and how far we're able to think ahead. So for me, it's the same here. We don't always want to look to how things were before, just like we don't want to never look to that. So there's something that we can learn from this whole virtual process that I believe should continue. I think that one positive to come out of this mostly sort of negative circumstance is that we now have the opportunity to reach, impact, and bring together wider communities of people. And that, for me, is what I don't see escaping us post-COVID. You know, we all know why Zoom are having their best year ever and why schools have created online platforms. It's not like they've suddenly had this epiphany, like, oh, let's do school online, or, you know, we're going to have a gazillion viewers next week, let's perfect our platform. They've been pressed to move to this world far more quickly. And that's the bubble that we're all in right now, trying to just scramble and put something together because we've been forced to. So that's not unlike you as a coach or businesses, schools, churches, whatever it might be. We've had to adapt and offer something because now we need it. And from my perspective at Challenger Sports, I'm very aware that we wouldn't be having virtual camps this summer if it wasn't for COVID, right? So again, there's a negative reason why we were pushed to build these programs, but it doesn't result in a negative outcome if we can go about things in the right way. For me, there's a ton of positive impacts on both business and people and players and coaches, which I think are very easy to maybe overlook or devalue because of how overwhelming it might seem right now. But I'm gonna go back to March when I was first asked to build our virtual camps, these virtual programs. You can see here, I'm referencing Simon Sinek's philosophy, start with why. So this is the point which I hope helps if you're looking at really creating your own platforms and your own virtual content. So whenever I'm building content, curriculums, session plans, whatever it might be, it's the why is very applicable, right? Why am I creating this program? Why am I building my session plan in this way? And then the answers should dictate where you go from there. So, you know, I'm building this program because we can or we may not be able to deliver in person. Or I'm building this session because my midfielders don't know the roles. So because of that why, it dictates your outcomes. And what really changed and sort of threw a spanner in the works with COVID was it created a unique why. And everybody's why was because we have to. So now there's this common why, which does nothing to help dictate where you go with your product or your service, or can really give you something of value. If everybody's starting from the point of we just have to do this, it's not necessarily going to help you build something to outlast this period of time. So for me, before proceeding, you know, with the challenge of, and it was a challenge, let me tell you, before building out these virtual programs, you know, you try and look at some research, and you don't want to close your mind and think what other people do, but you look around. And I specifically looked at the ACA, which is the American Camp Association, which I'd encourage anybody, again, looking to do this sort of stuff, go there, see what they're saying. I wanted to see if they had any guidance on it, and very quickly they did. And it was it really helped me. So they went into things a lot deeper than just take your program and put it online. How's that going to look? You know, here's how to perform an L-turn. You need to go deeper and help bring some familiar themes back to children who have probably lost these, like, you know, emotional stability, a sense of belonging, normality, accomplishment. These things that you can deliver easily on the field, but how does that look behind a computer screen? So that made me rewind and change our why from because we can't get on the fields to maybe, you know, I'm building this program to bridge the gap between the types of demographic who perhaps can attend one of our regular camps versus those who cannot. And these demographics range, obviously, that, you know, it might be that the current state of regulations, you know, what's Nevada look like compared to Rhode Island? How many COVID cases are they? Are they going backwards, forwards? To also, can they even afford a day camp, even if it is in their area? Is there even a camp or a program? You know, do they have readily available soccer programs in their community? And now this creates a why that helps us with our direction. How affordable can we make it? How accessible, how engaging, how fun, how safe? Things that you might not have considered if you're just trying to churn something out because it's needed. So I suppose in its most basic sense, my advice to anybody looking to how to create a positive virtual environment is to remove the current global environment from your reasoning and consider why you might be doing this in another, maybe more normal time. So
Sophie, just interrupt briefly. So could one of those, because I put in the box here, you're not looking at it as a Band-Aid as much as a sustainable program. So to my mind, kids in foreign countries that couldn't come to your camps because they don't live in America could now potentially be a client, customer, camper in the future, right?
100%. And that's one of our long-term goals, and something that this is physically possible right now. It's not as easy for them as we'd like it, just based on stupid things like conversion rates and you know, the registration process. They definitely can do that right now, but we want to make that even more accessible. So that's something that when we have to get this done in 8 weeks, this product, this program that, you know, should have taken 8 months to come up with, and we've got it together in time, there's little things on the back end that we need to look further down the line, like I said, post-COVID, and think, how can we make that now easier for people to get to us in the first place? So, I mean, obviously, anything virtual can reach anybody around the world so long as they have the internet. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So what guides me when creating virtual programs is sort of this basic checklist. Obviously, it goes deeper than this, but in its raw sense, you've got to ask yourself: is it fun? Will it create that sense of community or belonging? And will it challenge a player's skill set, which gives them that feeling of accomplishment or pride? We all know as coaches we can go and deliver these things on the field. We know we can make it fun. We know because they're there with their teammates, they'll have that sense of community. We know that we can look at Ian, who's really excelling at a skill compared to Vince, and we can know that we can challenge them appropriately. That's harder to do in this world. So it's about coming up with ways and means where you can make that translate into the virtual sense as best you can. And it is limited and it is challenging, but there's a lot of good stuff that you can do if you try and tick those check boxes. So looking ahead, there's great opportunities where you can go with this, like Ian just alluded to then. You know, virtual learning and virtual engagement, I believe, won't disappear completely. And I think, to be honest, that would be a great shame.
it'd be a great loss to the likes of people that Ian's just mentioned. You know, there are people out there who have actually been more engaged in sports, in self-development, in whatever it might be, than they've ever had an opportunity to do so before because of this. You know, for example, for the fall and the winter scheduling, we're looking at bringing in more external experts to help us create our content. So that'll obviously it'll strengthen the product and the program for sure, but what it will do, it'll go beyond that, and it'll go beyond that in a way that we can't go beyond that necessarily on the field. So, for example, we're hoping to work with John Farnworth, who, if you don't know who he is a world champion freestyler. I think he's got some world records, and he's just a super humble, nice guy that's in it for all the right reasons, despite his success. He used to deliver on-field programs for us, delivering his freestyle stuff. So that's great, and obviously there's nothing like being on the field, but he can only get to a limited amount of people. There's only one John Farnworth, right? And even if there's other people that can do what he does, there's only so many of them. There's only so much time, so much space that we can use. Now, if we can take John Farnworth and put his skill set into, you know, I don't know, if you think about a little girl sat in Cheyenne, Wyoming or something like that, do you think she's sat there with a plethora of freestyle opportunities on her doorstep? You know, maybe not. So being able to teach in this environment really opens up possibilities for us as coaches and for the players. And that's what obviously excites me, but I think will outlast and forces us to think of ways, okay, let's not just throw this away now and be done with it because we're back on the fields. Let's think of how we can continue to supplement.
So I've got a question. We've got a great and an educated audience for sure, but one of the terms we hear a lot is synchronous and asynchronous, right? You're not just putting up videos and then sending them the videos and say copying them, right? This is a lot of live learning where John, for example, would be talking to the kid in his or her backyard as the kid is trying the skills. So there is that live component, right?
Yeah, so we wanted to find the balance between, we did what everybody else was doing in the spring, which was just let's get loads of live sessions up there and, you know, give people something. And they were fine, but they've got the limitations. And we tried to find a balance between how can we still make it personable and bring through the personality of a coach, of a mentor, you know, make it feel like those players are connected with them. Whereas at the same time, controlling the quality of the content, the consistency of the content, the curriculum, and delivering a top-class product. And that's where we got to this sort of hybrid of the coach delivers something live, but they go through some pre-recorded material, but we want them to do it with us. So we put it on a schedule so that if they miss it, they can get it, but they're doing it with us, and it's all part of that. We start the camps by saying, just because you can't see, and we have two types of programs, one's run as a one-way broadcast where they can only see us, we had another where we can see them. But the former has been more successful than the latter. So if they can just see us, how it's actually been surprising how engaged that they've been with that, you know, through chat functions and other things. But that's what's been important to us, is to make sure that they still feel like they're part of something, but at the same time, not relying on necessarily my coaching staff to be running around the garden, coming back to the screen, giving some coaching points. Hopefully they're delivering it in the right way, versus here's the content, it's quality, it's good, it's consistent. Bring your coaching personality to it, bring your style, and deliver it the best way you can. And I think that's been part of our success, is doing it in that way. And we're going to try and be consistent with that, but we're definitely open to doing things in different ways. And as we all are in this environment, we're learning what's worked, what hasn't worked, and hopefully we'll continue that in the fall. That answers that, Ian?
Yeah, it's good.
So just finishing up here on this little presentation piece, you know, it's kind of been a very stressful time for people, both behind the scenes, but also the recipients during this time. And as things begin to normalize, it's going to give us a chance to look back, like I've just said, and look at what we put out and consider its value. And instead of abandoning, like I said, this idea of virtual, we'll hopefully have the time to improve upon it and consider how this can still positively impact our athletes. Like I just said, there's no replacing in-person coaching and training, and I don't think that's what anybody in any world wants to do. But the goal can be to supplement training should players be seeking out more than what they currently have provided to them, or if there's not a great deal of opportunities for them, this should fit in there. And then, that's where this sudden rush of virtual can only be a good thing in my eyes. But, I'll cycle back to where we began, and I suppose this is what my bit of advice is, having rode this roller coaster, it's for me now, it's the reason behind it is it's always what I would do in hindsight, and I would like everybody else to do, is approach this and consider how you would be creating your product or your service in a pre-2020 world, so COVID world. And if you can do that, I think that's going to help you build something worthwhile that will hopefully be of value in 2020 and beyond. So that's obviously how we're continuing to work, and we're going to take your why of I need to deliver something because we can't be there with them to, okay, pre-2020, if I was going to do this, why would I be doing it? And that's hopefully going to help you come up with a product or service that, like you say, Ian, isn't just the Band-Aid, but helps you continue to provide something to that larger audience that you might not have ever captured before.
Couple of questions. I've put the website up a couple of times now, and I know I just went to the website myself, and the virtual is right there. Are there video examples of what it looks like, or is there somewhere where the coaches on the attendance box can find an example?
Yeah, so if they go to Challenger Sports /virtual, we'll find out some information on there, but we also have snippets on our Facebook and Instagram pages, and when we send out our email to our database, we send out little like freebies so they can join. Most of our pre-recorded material games last in 10-minute blocks. So, we've got a 2-hour program. So each demo video is roughly 10 minutes, and we send out a few freebies so people, because what we found is it's not that people don't trust us as Challenger Sports, but they don't know what this virtual environment is.
That's why we got you on, because we didn't know what it was, so that's fine.
And it's hard even to explain it to you without you necessarily being a part of it. So if anybody wants to be a part of it, I can definitely get you onto a camp and show you what it is. But for my starting point was, how can we take this where we started, which was, okay, we can deliver 40 minutes of foot skills because it's one person with a ball. And for me at the start, it was, okay, that's fine, but that's not a camp. And if you're asking us to come up with a camp, what pieces of the camp structure can we bring in? But what can we use that we understand about the virtual world to help facilitate this, 2-hour program? And if you think to, if anybody's got 8-9-year-olds out there, I'm sure you're pretty sure that your child can sit on a tablet and watch YouTube for 2 hours, right? So it's the balance between making it entertaining as well as something that they join in with. So we have other pieces on there that we have extended water breaks about our champions of character, like respect, responsibility and stuff. And that's just some inspirational movies and ways they can engage with that. And that's another bit of advice I'd give people, is make sure you have something that's just not skill. You just got to break it up a little bit.
So to Rob in Missouri, Rob, it sounds like Instagram, Facebook, you can find examples. And then Sophie made the invite to everybody on the attending. If you're interested in observing, sounds like if you contact Sophie, she'll get you an observer, so you can go and have a look at what it looks like, for either for your inspiration or for recommending to your kids and parents if you're that type of program. I got a couple of quick ones, Sophie. So you just talked there a little bit about the other content you're putting in that isn't technical, but you're putting in some movies and inspirational stuff. So is that how you get to this notion of community? Because one of the things I always think about with camps, it's kind of a fun thing, right? At the end, you do a silly photo and you do T-shirt day and all of that. So how does community look like in a virtual camp?
So for me, this was a tricky one, and you're entirely right. Obviously, when you go and when I visit any of my in-person camps, it's all about the kids remember a lot more, not necessarily about, oh, coach taught me how to do a Cruyff turn. It's, at the end of camp, we had a water fight or whatever. Just the fun things that brings everybody together. So in an online environment, you've got to be dubious that I don't know if I had a group of players physically, I can tell which ones that I'll be comfortable with doing a demo, or asking them to do better, even though they stood in front of everybody. You've got to be very careful. You've got to read your players. You can't do that here. So I think that's also a reason why the webinar with the one-way broadcast has been fairly successful, because players can do things by themselves where nobody's seeing or necessarily judging them, but they're letting us know, and you'll be surprised at how honest they are. And, some of them are a bit down on themselves, but you can really raise them up through that, and you can ask them how they're doing and if they need extra help. And it's like anything online, and it's a blessing and a curse. But when you're sat behind a keyboard, it's easier to be yourself as versus, if I'm with somebody and you can really interact, you got to be people are more careful. So in this environment, you can really bring people together. It takes a couple of days. You'll see Monday, people aren't as active in the chat and other things. Tuesday, they get a bit more. Wednesday, everybody's, going in. And even if I say, all right, Vince, give yourself a 4 out of 10 for that skill. I'm sure you were better than that, but let us know if you need more help. That child won't mind you saying that, as opposed to if you were on the field with a bunch of players saying, listen, Vince, obviously that was better. So it's funny
I'm used to that, so that's okay.
So that sense of belonging, you can really see and you can really feel it. And there's, we do use other things apart from the skills and everything like that. But those champions of character and other, we have quizzes and polls. So we launch a quiz, and it's just for fun, and they all put their answers in, and it just goes back to them knowing there's a lot of you here. And if I'm sat here talking to Ian and Vince is watching, he gets to know you by the end of the week through me.
So there's one thing that we talked about. There's one thing we talked about off air, and as you've been explaining it more now, it's kind of inspired me. So can you talk a little bit about what you send the kids, particularly the cones and how they lay it out? And then what that might look like post-COVID now, could that example of what you have them do now, could that be something that carries on post-COVID?
Right. So for us, it was important to provide a package that facilitated what they were doing. So, we all love a sticker or a wristband or whatever else, but we know that we're starting to reach people that I'm asking you to set a 10 by 10 grid up or whatever, fine, you can use socks, you can use water bottles, you can use whatever, but let's include something in the camper package that makes them feel like this is a session. So we send them 12 cones, and that's what we design the curriculum and the sessions around. Use these 12 cones, keep them in that same grid formation each day. So the camper gets 8 of either one colour or one size and 4 of another. And this allows us to set up our sessions, and we go through that as one of the first things each day. Hey guys, you've obviously received your grid set up. Here's a reminder of it. Hopefully you've got the set up. If not, I'll give you a few minutes. Get themselves set up with the cones, and they get a soccer ball and a t-shirt. And hopefully, again, that just, everyone's there, everyone's in the t-shirt, they've got the same soccer ball, they've got a set of cones, they've got everything they need to not only perform what we're asking them to perform, but to feel like they're part of something. So that was important to us. And I think, going forward, we found we've had a lot of repeat campers, and it was also important. Ain't nobody need 24, 36, 48 cones. So they were like, oh, Capri has joined every single week. What are we going to, we need to stop sending Capri cones. So we added different things. Do you want a water bottle? Do you want a hat? Whatever it is, what do you want? To try and look at that. And then I think, moving forward, that's going to be a difficult thing for us, because for the camps, we certainly need it. In the fall and the winter, when we're probably starting to look towards players who are maybe a bit older, maybe a bit more motivated, probably have their own equipment and even cones. Do we really need to give that? Because one of the goals and one of the whys of our product here is we have a product that is a quarter of the cost of what we're able to deliver on the camps, because obviously your overheads go through the roof, obviously, when you're delivering in person, bringing in the staff, blah, 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 blah. So we can make this very affordable. So the camper package obviously is to help facilitate, but we don't want to ever just throw things in there for the sake of it if the price is going to increase. So when we look ahead, obviously that's something we need to consider. How do we keep this cost down so it can reach as many people as possible? We can reach that new audience. And I think just naturally, given the age groups that have been most popular, I think those types of players are probably going to have their own equipment to get to use anyways.
I love that idea. This to me is one of the sort of unintentional benefits. That is that you're sending them on a daily basis how they prepare to do the session. So they're making their grids, they're measuring out. That's so now when we come back and everything, hopefully at some point in the future, kids that have been in your virtual camps, if they come out to an in-person camp, they know how to set up a grid because they've done it. Most kids, as we know, up to this point, never set up grids for themselves. It's always done by us.
Right.
What a wonderful, empowering thing. And for me, this is one of those examples, as you were talking about earlier, that when we're all back to normal, this could be a new skill set, a new challenge, a new quality that empowers players to take more ownership of their training environment. So that was a huge highlight for me.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it also helps parents in the sense that, I've got players that I've worked with and then look, the parents be like, oh, we bought some cones so they could do some stuff in the garden, and then you get there and like, what am I doing with these cones? So yeah, for sure, I think that'll be helpful, and hopefully we'll, like you say, continue. But I do want to give a quick, because I know I'm the face of this here today, but Dan Miller, who is our tech guy, he's the guy that sends out the grids every day. So he's been a huge part of this, and Brandon Milburn and Nate Bliss have been behind the scenes editing and putting it all together. So definitely want to give a shout out to those guys, and we've been a big team trying to get this together.
There's one interesting question from Josh. I'm going to ask you that, and then I'm going to have Vince wrap, because we're right about that half-hour mark, and you can tell us a little bit more about where we can find the camps. And I know you're doing a fire sale on camps in the next couple of days. But Josh asked a question, and I think it's a good one. So obviously you use a lot of British talent, young people coming over to run the camps. And that Britishness is really a huge selling point sometimes in the camps in person. Now you've got a young British person. You're not using a lot of guys, I'm assuming, right now from the UK. So are most of your coaches in the virtual camps experienced already with coaching young Americans? Or are they trying to learn how to coach a young American and they're trying to do it through a computer?
It's a combination. I've got some people in Brazil, I've got some people in the UK, some people in the US, with all different levels of experience. And it's a very different criteria that we need from them than perhaps they'd give on the fields. So everybody's learning what's the best. And I think we've come up with a sort of good criteria to pull that together. But it's still about their personality and how they deliver. And that's what they need a little bit more of, and confidence. Confidence is definitely key in this environment, because it's new to us all. And if you're worried about it and that comes across, it's going to come across to your campers. Whereas on the field, we all know what we're doing, it's easy. So there's certainly a different criteria. We're all over the world right now, and it's probably going to continue that way. If we're delivering all over the world, we should be able to pull people in from all over the world.
So thank you very much, Sophie, for all this. You've given more than we've asked you to give time-wise. You acknowledge the people that do the tech part, right? And because I can only imagine when this hit in March, and then all of a sudden, like, oh my gosh, now we're going to go this way. Look, I stress out just setting up these webinars. Right? I mean, it's just a lot for me. I can only imagine the planning and over planning and all that the tech people had to do. And I can appreciate it because I do it for us, but for a lot of it for us. But so I was just curious, but you answered that question, right? That just a lot of people were involved in planning and trying to get it all together. So
yeah, there was, and it was Dan, bless his heart, when we were first coming up with this, it was very, route one that we were looking at was the easiest way to do things.
Yeah.
I was the content, the curriculum person. Dan was the tech guy, and here's how this is going to work. And then my job was to sort of say to Dan, and I'm sure he's on, so he won't mind. But
He is, actually.
Well, he is.
He is. He did a great job, so be careful.
So I went to him and said, okay, Dan, you're behind the scenes. You're not what the people, anybody logging into these camps, it's going to be seamless, it's going to be easy. They're not going to appreciate your work. That's right. You've got a thankless role. You're a striker in a team that can't get the ball to you. Unfortunately, that's what you are right now. And so your job is to facilitate my content and the way that we want to deliver it. And if we're doing this hybrid of pre-recorded material to make sure it's quality controlled and consistent, this easy way doesn't work. Right. And straight away, you know, he owned that straight away, and he was like, okay, back to the drawing board. And it made his life far more difficult, and he had to do a ton more work. And what he was able to achieve from there is something that, you know, it's easy for me to say, well, that's not good enough, we need something else. But the work that he had to do to make that work has been incredible. So it's not been an easy ride, and it won't be for anybody. There's a lot of pieces to it, but get yourself a tech guy like Dan, and you'll be all right.
I'll tell you what, we'll invite Dan on next time. We'll have a pint, and we'll celebrate his efforts. But Sophie, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you, Coach Parker, for setting this up. I think it's a fascinating idea, and thank you for being willing to share how they can do it. So by going to you, and looks like your colleague Brandon also put it in a nice little blurb about how we can.
Sophie, you have the camps can be purchased online right now, and you've got a sale going on, right?
Yeah, so challengersports.com/virtual. We've got a flash sale, so if people register before midnight Friday, I believe they get 10% off. I mean, you know, as affordable as they can be anyway, but yeah.
Okay. We shared a comment from one of the attendees. I sent it to Dan and Brandon too. He said, I believe what you are delivering should also be a great motivation and personal discipline program, which it sounds like it is, right? So, you know, very often we know mums and dads sign the kids up for the camps, and then the kid gets sent to you on a field for 2 hours, and now you've got to deal with this kid that maybe didn't want to sign up. This one is there's a greater commitment on the part of the kid almost to stay with you in that virtual environment.
100%, and that's what I'm enjoying about what we're doing as well is, and we've been speaking about how we're going forward and stuff, and it always has to come back to how that player is accountable for themselves versus us as a coach keeping them accountable, because that's not what we're ever going to try and do here. So like I said to you, I think before we started, is our main audience for the on-field camps is maybe, you know, those 6 to 9 year olds versus what we're doing now, which is 9 to 14 year olds. So there's a lot of things that obviously probably make that so, you know, maybe parents are more comfortable with kids at that age being online and other things. But it does take a certain type of person to have the discipline and the motivation to get up and train by themselves. And that's where we have to try and make them feel like they're not by themselves, but they still have to be motivated to do the skills during those 10 minutes.
Excellent. Some really nice comments in the chat box, Sophie. I don't know if you can see it, but people really appreciate it.
A lot of hellos.
Yeah, well, there's a young man named Alex who's been on our show. He's 11, and he stuck through the whole thing. And he said, "Very good presentation, so well done." And I'm going to take some of your hair for our next presentation. So thank you.
There's enough of it to go around.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for coming on. Coach Barker, you're going to have to end the show. But we'd love to have you maybe back on someday, and maybe some of your colleagues as well, if you're interested. So thank you.
Sure,
yeah, tomorrow, same time, we're going to just have like a little wrap up of the soccer week and just a little informal chit chat, the TJF with Ian Mulliner from Massachusetts. Sophie has the distinct privilege of knowing Ian Mulliner and seeing Ian Mulliner at work. Your example of the striker that couldn't get the ball, I said that was like Giroud when he was at Arsenal, but we'll leave it on that note, okay?
I'm actually waiting for my new Arsenal shirt. It's supposed to be being delivered. I was thinking, it's going to come to the door while we're on.
FA Cup final tomorrow. FA Cup final Saturday, right?
I know, that's why I want it. I want it in time. I don't want to miss it. I'm like a kid at Christmas. Except
if you're going to beat Man City to get there, you better beat Chelsea now that you're there. So good luck.
Good luck.
Good job, Scott. Great job. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.